guys, and welcome back to my channel. So with the way that the world is at the moment, with everyone feeling so overwhelmed and stressed, and with all the changes going on and just all of the fear that's just circulating at the moment, I thought that now is the perfect time for people to get into their family history. So whether or not you've really worked on your family history before, it's just a great time, because when we can look back to the past and see the crazy times that other people have lived through and we can compare it to our own, it just gives us this whole new perspective on things. This isn't about me saying that people in the past had it worse, so just stop your complaining. I don't really think that's helpful, but it's just about having some extra perspective. So it's okay to be scared or uncertain about things, but when we remind ourselves of what other people have gone through, sometimes it just gives us a different angle, a different way of looking at things, and it can be so helpful. It just reminds us that facing difficulties is just sort of normal, and hard times are just a part of human existence. So for example, when I start looking through my family tree, I can see my great-great-grandmother who lost her son in World War I. Or I can see my great-grandparents who lost their son in World War II. And I think living through those wars must have been just beyond difficult. And when I think about all of the people who had to send away their fathers and husbands and sons and brothers and friends to the other side of the world, and they had no idea whether they were coming back or not, that must have just been terrifying. Or like my 7 times great-grandfather who died at the Battle of Culloden. I can only imagine what a difficult time that was for Scottish people, because that battle kind of marked the end of an independent Scotland. So living through such changes like that would have been just extraordinarily difficult. Or moving away from wars, I could look at my convict ancestors. So I have 8 convict ancestors who were sent from England and Ireland to Australia, and they were all sent here for what would now be considered petty theft, like minor sort of crimes. And they had to come out here and never see their homeland or their families ever again. And I mean, just the journey would have been difficult, and then arriving here and having to work for masters who were often cruel and sometimes sadistic too. And like, they made the best of the lot that they ended up with, and it just would have been so extraordinarily tough living their lives. Like, so whenever I think that, you know, life isn't fair, it's not fair, I think, you know, how must it have felt for them? It must have felt so bitterly unfair, and there was just nothing that they could do about it. So looking at those hard sort of stories reminds us that they lived through difficult times, and we ourselves are finding these to be difficult times. And we're only really going to know in the future, when we can look back with hindsight, how difficult they actually were. At the moment it seems difficult, but of course it could be a lot worse, and of course it could be a lot better. So only really time will tell, but this, just like all of those other times, will pass. Another way that we can look at it is to look to our ancestors for strength, to look at some of the achievements that they had. Like maybe you had somebody in your tree who accomplished amazing things, and you can look to them as a source of inspiration and strength. So I have some great historical figures in my tree, and I really try to look to them to draw on their strength. So for example, my 20th great-grandfather is King Robert the Bruce of Scotland. And when I think of him and I think of how he fought for Scottish independence, I'm so proud to have him as my ancestor. And if I can come from such a strong line of people, then surely even just a bit of that strength is in me. And so I should try to make them proud. Or I could go back a crazy long way to my 32nd great-grandfather, who was Rollo. Is that going back too far? No, there's no such thing as too far. So Rollo, the famous Viking who became king of Normandy, I feel like he would have never been afraid of anything. And if I have even just a tiny shred of him in me, then I'm doing really well. So these are just a few little stories from my tree, and these stories really help me to put everything into perspective and say, what am I going through right now? And what are all of the things that they've gone through? And you can kind of look at it as the bigger picture of all of history, of all of my family story. And what I'm doing right now is this tiny little portion. And when I look at the huge big picture, I'm just a piece of that story. So you should use this time to work on your family history, dig up some of your ancestors' stories, find out who they were and what they went through, find out the difficulties that they suffered and the achievements that they made, and use that as a source of inspiration and pride. Alternatively, if you're not really wanting to delve into your family tree, you can also just look into history, just read some history. Because even if it's not your family's story, it could just be the story of all of humankind. And throughout humankind, there has been terrible suffering and there's been amazing achievement. So if we can draw on some of that strength as inspiration and just remind ourselves how things are always sort of flowing this way and that, and even when things get bad, they do get better again. And when they get really good, they can turn to bad again. It's just about being philosophical about the whole thing and just remembering that these times will pass. So that's my little 2 cents worth. If you want help working on your family tree, please check out my other videos and get in touch if you have any other questions. And please let me know in the comments below who your ancestors were and what their stories were. Did you have anyone who suffered something terrible or lived through a terrible time? Did you have a famous historical figure or even a non-famous figure who did something amazing? If you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future videos. I hope that you are all taking care of yourselves and making your ancestors proud. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye!